What, man? You ain't know I was in the bathroom? You know? Good, thank you, man. Somebody tell me. I ain't gonna start without me at the table. How's everybody doing? Thank you so very much for having me. Thank you, distinguished guests, Father Beretta, all the staff, alumni, students, my family, friends, classmates. I'm very, very proud to be here. I thought long and hard. When the organization first called me, I thought, you know, what do I really have to say? And but I thought, you know, I'm very proud to be an alumnus of Salesianum School. And it was a very integral part of my success, and it continues to be. And so, again, thank you very, very much for coming tonight. Before I get started, I was thinking, and I think of Steve Armstrong. I probably called him 15 times. I said, Steve, you know, what do I talk about? I mean, really. I still consider myself a kid from East 28th Street who was lucky enough to get some great breaks, lucky enough to be, again, blessed with great friends and great families, coaches, mentors, and folks who love me and encourage me despite me being me, as I like to say it. But on a festive occasion like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who obviously I went to Morehouse College, so I'm obviously proud and steep in that tradition. Actually went to school with Dexter King, was in my class actually. So I thought, you know, that's a big task. But I thought, let me just talk about my experience and let me share some of my story and my journey and how I got from one point to the other. And Stephen, again, was very, very encouraging. All the members of the Black Alumni Association, Black Students Organization. And I felt really, really comfortable. And then as I was thinking about it, and I think one of the things that made me nervous was I barely got out of here. So I thought maybe they'll ask for my degree back if I show up outside the building. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But so I was a little nervous, and so I called my daughters, and I got started a little late. I've got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. And the 9-year-old, who is a real encouraging, nurturing person, said, you know, well, if you get nervous, Dad, just look at your notes, look at the people, you know what you're talking about, and it'll be fine. So I said, okay, I'm encouraged. I won't be nervous. So I asked my 12-year-old, maybe this is a preteen thing. I said, well, what do you think? Any last words? I mean, what should I do? She goes, well, I'm not really sure why you're concerned, because you're a nobody. So it's not like they could trash you on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, really, nobody knows you, Dad. I said, okay. I'm glad to be a nobody, and thanks for the encouragement. I'll remember that when time for allowance comes around. But it's really about the journey. So today, what I thought was that I'm among friends and family, and I'd just be as honest and candid, as frank as I can about my journey to and from Salesianum and what it's meant to me, and maybe if you find it encouraging, entertaining, hopefully you'll do that. And I want to be a big supporter of this organization and what you're trying to do, because I think more kids of color should take advantage of this opportunity, and I'm going to do everything I can to help them in that way. So, but I had to still think hard and long about exactly what I was going to say, because you see, like, many of the happiest days in my life were spent about 500 yards from this room in a gymnasium down the hallway where I played on a Catholic League championship team, by the way. Spent at least 10,000 hours practicing and playing ball under the direction of Angelo Rossi, Coach Rossi, who I had the good fortune of having lunch with about 3 or 4 months ago in New York. And with a group of guys that I'm still in contact with a few. We tweet, we We text each other and still talk. Bill Kwiatkowski, who lives in Charlotte right now, as a matter of fact, when he got the notice in the mail, he called me. He said, Black Alumni Association, that sounds plural. Basically, he's saying there was one or two people, black people that were saying that. And I thought, okay, I'll take that from you. But the gym was my home away from home. And not to brag, but I was pretty good. My senior year, I made All-Catholic, led the league in assists, top 10 in the state in assists that year. And that was a really good year. But let me back it up a little bit. Because in addition to the good times, I also spent some of the worst times in my life about 300 yards from here where the main office is. In detention. I don't even know where it is. I probably suppressed that and blocked that out of my mind. But there was a father here. His name was Father Rosinski. Is he still alive? He passed away. Rest in peace. But we used to call him, rest in peace. We used to call him Willard the Rat. Okay, because he was everywhere, and I thought he had it in for me because I was a mischievous kid. I mean, I was into some trouble. It was my fault, but he caught me everything I did. So most of the time it was my fault, but he was everywhere. That's why we called him Willard the Rat. But so after careful thought again and consideration about what I wanted to talk about, I am writing a book. It's going to be released in November, and the title of the book is All Jokes Aside, The Trials and Tribulations of a Would-Be Entrepreneur. The book is scheduled to be released in November, and the book is going to chronicle my life from Spruce Street to Wall Street and through my wild ride that I took in the world of stand-up comedy. In this book, I dedicate an entire chapter to my time at Salesianum, because I would not be the man that I am today without my experience at this school. But when you write a personal story like this, a memoir of sorts, to be authentic, and I really have no interest in being anything other than authentic, you have to be honest and forthcoming, butt naked, as we like to say. But you have to open up boxes that are stored in your brain, and a lot of these boxes say, do not enter. Do not open. Open, fragile. Handle with care. And it's like a ball of yarn, because I'm working with a writer. His name is Chris Bournay. He's out of Columbus, Ohio. And his mentor is Will Haygood. If you've seen the movie The Butler, Will Haygood, that's his original story. And in talking to those guys, they say, you know what, Ray, you gotta let it go. And it's like a ball of yarn, though. But once you pull one string, another string, and another string, and there's just no way to write about it without being completely honest. So today, I'm probably going to share some things that I have never shared in public, actually. But they're part of the story that's part of my whole makeup. And I was talking to my cousin earlier, and I told him, I said, I speak before kids and mentoring and things of that nature, but I haven't spoken before a public audience in quite some time. But he reminded me that I did give the commencement speech in 8th grade at Burnett Middle School. So here we go. I won't talk about how that went, but hopefully I don't have that same problem here tonight, though. But so if you don't mind, I thought what might be interesting and hopefully not boring is that I read an excerpt from the book that I dedicated to Salesianum. And you can stop me along the way if you want to ask questions. And I will, again, try to be as frank and honest as I possibly can. So, the title of this chapter is Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And I start each chapter with a quote because I like quotes. I've got thousands of them, and I like they're inspiring, they're short, they're quick, to the point. And so this particular chapter, I started with, education is the passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Malcolm X. So like many African Americans who wanted to provide a quality education for their children in the 60s and the 70s, my father and my parents wanted me to have educational opportunities that they did not have. They took education very seriously, and they thought Catholic school was a way to accomplish that goal. So they offered me the opportunity to attend a Catholic school, and I chose Salesianum, a Roman Catholic independent school that's still one of the nation's top private institutions in the country. Salesianum has made the Catholic Honor Roll and named one of the top 50 Catholic high schools in America in 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. That's where it stops, so I'm not sure what I can do, what we do. But needless to say, it's one of the best Catholic schools in the country. Okay. Salesianum has a long history of powerhouse athletics, competing in 15 variety sports, and have won at least one championship in every sport we compete in, including basketball. That monkey finally got off my back. I was so happy. I do read Delaware Online, and I follow it religiously, so I was on edge last year, and I'm so happy about that. 138 state championships in total. And I'm sure my nephew who's here today is tired of me talking about it. I asked him, did he want to go in the gym today so he could look up at the banner, so I'm trying to inspire him. But I was so confident that I could excel at Salesianum, where I would be able to continue and pursue my love of sports, but where academic excellence was expected. If I just stayed focused and worked hard, I could maybe even earn a scholarship. My father believed in me and wanted me to have this opportunity, and he was willing to work 2 and 3 jobs to pay the tuition. But it did take me a while to adjust. You see, growing up, I had attended Stubbs School, George Gray Elementary School, and Burnett Middle School, all predominantly black schools. But at Salesianum, the racial makeup was completely flipped. So it's not surprising that I experienced culture shock when I started at Salesianum. Every day I'd make that 1.5 mile walk. Kids walk 2 blocks these days and they're tired. I'm walking my daughter 3 blocks. Say, oh, can we take a cab? I'm like, take a cab? We only go at 6 blocks. But anyway, she said, you walked in the wintertime too? I said, yes, I did. So I had to make this 1.5 mile walk through my neighborhood, which initially I was taunted because I had to wear a suit jacket and a tie to school every day. It got to a point where I stopped wearing the tie out of the house. Not sure why I did that, because they knew I was going to put the tie on at some point. But I stopped wearing the tie out of the house, and I would not put it on until I got in sights of Salesianum. Now, on several occasions, I was late for school, and in my haste, I forgot to follow my protocol. So I found myself in front of my locker with no tie. And who do you think was right around the corner and caught me? Willard. Mr. Lambert, where's your tie? I'm sorry, it's in my bag. Demerit, see you at the detention. The language, the style, the food. To be quite honest, I had never had a Caucasian teacher. And during my time at Salesianum, there were no black teachers. In fact, the only black employee was the janitor. That's not a commentary on a profession or what he did for a living, because my father had second jobs as janitor. I was a janitor in the summer at Star Janitorial. Was that still around, Star Janitorial? Okay, but he was the only person that was here. So adding to the fuel to this fire was the late 70s, and this was the tail end of the sort of Black Power movement. And I was developing this very pro-black nationalism consciousness. And I had an uncle who's here today, and if you spend 5 minutes with him, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And I bought it all, hook, line, and sinker. And I used to go to a barber shop in my neighborhood that were owned by members of the Nation of Islam at this time, and I would listen to the conversations, and I thought they were fascinating, and I thought they were bold. They were talking about slavery, civil rights, condition of black folk, the man. And I was just buying it up. It was like I was like a sponge. And I so enjoyed those conversations. And they provided me with this tons of material. And I was a voracious reader. I've always liked to read a lot. So I not only studied the material, but I slept with the books and papers that they gave me under my pillow. I still have books that my Uncle Sonny gave me on my library shelf. I read whatever I could, even under the nightlight. And I read all the time, and I read everywhere. At one point, I used to read at dinner table, which is kind of reminiscent of what kids do today with a phone. They can't be off of it for 2 or 3 minutes, but I have to empathize because I used to like bringing a book to the table myself. But she banned me from doing that, but I snuck it under the table, and I would read it, and then I'd wait until everybody left the dinner table before I leave so she wouldn't see the book. I'm sure she saw it, though. So I was reading about Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, Paul Robeson. And I still have the books, again, I said my uncle gave me on J.A. Rogers and James Brown. I was listening to that, and that's where the title of that chapter came from. I honestly think James Brown's an underrated civil rights leader. I really, really do. If you listen to the music, it's really powerful. So I'm listening to all this, and then I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which really, really changed my life. But as you might imagine, these ideas and philosophies did not always work well at Salesianum. While I was not flamboyant, I was always introspective, but I would think things through, or I thought I was thinking things through before I spoke. But I wasn't a guy who was going to go along with things, and these guys had me psyched up and do things just because they were that way. So I had no problem in expressing my views in class or anywhere else. So I wasn't going to follow doctrine, and I had been taught to question everything and everybody. And besides, I was at Salesianum because of the academics and the athletics, not particularly for the religious doctrine. In fact, religion was not really a major part of my childhood. It was quite the opposite. Whereas church is a pillar of the community, for many African Americans, I was never forced to attend any kind of religious service. I don't even really recall funerals held at churches. I remember funerals being at funeral homes. But growing up, I got the sense that my parents in particular felt that all religious people were hypocrites. If you know my parents, they're not shy about expressing their opinion. Say one thing, practice another. That was my mother. So she used to repeatedly tell me this story over and over again about how she had went to church once, saw the pastor's wife drinking liquor straight out of a bottle in the bathroom, and that was it for her. I will not be going back to the church. I said, you didn't want to try it one more time? No. Okay. But you'll be happy to know, Father, and that she, later in life, she did find Jesus, and she embraced the church and became a regular active member. Now her son, never mind, we won't even talk about that. But don't judge me, okay? He's not finished with me yet. My father simply never expressed interest in religion, black or white. He did always say to me, one thing that resonated with me was that he felt like the black church was very good at the hereafter, but not too good about the here and now. And that always stuck with me. But while no one religion was dominant in our family, I think I had members, family, friends, colleagues who were atheists, who were Baptists, who were Muslim, who were Buddhist, Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist. You name it, we had it. And I enjoyed debating religion and philosophy for hours. I could relate to what all of them were saying, and while I didn't always agree in total, they did speak truth to power, and I liked that a lot. So I came up with this brilliant idea one day on my way to Salesianum, that from that point forward I was going to speak truth to power. And I'd show these priests what the deal was, and what the truth was, and what they were missing, and how they had it all wrong. It's amazing when you're like 15 years old, you know everything, right? So I would study and read the Bible and other texts so I could find out things that in my mind were illogical, disputable, contradictory, And I used to come across passages, and I used to be so excited. I couldn't wait to get to school tomorrow. There's a father here, his father Roscoe, who I believe is still around, would engage me in these debates, which was really, really encouraging. But on the other side, it wasn't so good, because after I left his class and tried to do it in another class, it didn't work out so well. So once I found this passage, and it said, "Call no man father but the Father," from Matthew 23:9. I was so excited. While I generally refuse to interpret the Bible literally, I took this literally, and on one occasion I decided, that's it. I'm not calling any priest father. It's right here, Matthew 23:9. I think I skipped to school that day. And I got in, I can't think of the father's name, but he was old school, real close crew cut. He taught accounting. I can't think of the name right now. He didn't tolerate us, okay? There was going to be a lesson, you're here for a purpose, end of story. True Catholic school educator. So I get into class, and I figure if I take down the biggest, you know, then I'm going to have my reputation from that point forward. So I get into class, and I say, "Sir, I'm sorry, but I can't call you father anymore." So he says, "Excuse me, lad?" He still called kids lads. This was like 1979. So you know how serious he was. So he said, "Excuse me?" And I said, "I'm sorry, sir." He said, "It's father to you." So I said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't call you that. It's in the Bible. And I'm sorry." He says, "You're going to call me father?" I said, "Please explain." "I'll explain to you at detention, demerit." I said, "Sir," I said, "but let me ask you a few questions then, sir." "I'm sorry, father." I was kind of a jerk back then, right? Okay, so I said, "Was Jesus black?" He said, "Demerit." I said, "How about any of the disciples?" "That's none of your concern, demerit." "Do animals have souls? Do they go to heaven?" Now at this particular time, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I was working at a health food store that I was hanging around vegans and vegetarians. So this was a big question they wanted me to ask, right? I said, "Do animals go to heaven?" He said, "No." I said, "Then what do people eat in heaven? Are they vegetarians?" Demerit, demerit. You figure that out. Needless to say, my acts of rebellion earned me numerous acts of detention. It earned me so many demerits that at one time I had to go to detention every day for a week and the weekend. You still have detention on the weekends? No more? It's too much? You had to dress up in your clothes, suit, tie, jacket, 2 hours on Saturday. The price of freedom of speech can be very expensive. It wasn't much better at home because I kind of stayed in trouble. Not criminal, but, you know, teenage stuff like curfew. If the time I had been told to be home made no sense to me, and I felt it was unreasonable, I just ignored it. I was fully content to suffer the consequences. The benefit of staying out past curfew outweighed the punishment I figured I would receive. And what was wrong with my father anyway? He just didn't get it. I needed to be in the streets with the people. Being home by 12 midnight was just too early. And not enough time for me to find and teach all these lost souls. Not to mention the pretty girls that hung around the party after 12 o'clock. I need to be out at least till 2 a.m. It's the weekend. Teenagers, right? My day is coming. I suffered many a cursing out, not spankings, beatings, and ultimately locked out, which my brother who's here tonight, I had a strategy where I would say, I would leave the windows unlocked, and I'd slide in because we were on the first floor. So my father found out that strategy because he went to bed probably at 1 and I wasn't there. So he asked my brother, well, how did he even get in here? Because I went to bed at 1 o'clock and he wasn't here. So, okay, let's double down. You're going to get the same thing that he gets. So he snitched. And my father decided that he figured out a way to lock all the windows and the latch on the door, so you couldn't, because I even had that strategy where you could reach in and unlock that little latch there. Boom, you in. He fixed all of that. Ultimately, there were many a nights that I had to actually sleep outside on the front lawn. I was determined though. You don't know what pain in the butt teenagers are until you get one, right? But other than religion class and a few other classes, Coach Rossi taught a journalism class that really held my interest. I didn't really apply myself for the first years of Salesianum. I just wanted to play ball and get out of here. I didn't really do homework, although I did pay close attention in class. But laugh at me as you might, but this was all part of my master plan. You see, I think you had to have a 2.0 GPA to play ball. So I wanted to do a little bit better than that. So I shot for a 2.1. What's the point of doing more than is necessary? And I'm a jock. Nobody has high expectations from me anyway, right? No, actually I was completely wrong. But in spite of my lackadaisical attitude towards authority and academics, I was able to letter in basketball for 3 seasons, and during the off season I always had a job, and I worked at this company I mentioned earlier called Juicemat, which was a health food store. This was the late 70s, and like a precursor to Whole Foods, General Nutrition Centers, was an organic type store. And I learned a lot working there. Mr. Ryan, who was the owner of that store, was actually a graduate of Salesianum, and he gave me that opportunity. And he took a personal interest in me and taught me mostly everything I know today about healthy eating. And he was a seasoned entrepreneur, and he would talk to me about business and how you run a business and how they work and how they operate, and he happened to have a family business. And there were a lot of dynamics about that. So we would talk about that, and he really took a personal interest in me, and I learned a lot of benefits from him, not only about being a vegetarian, and I think he might have been the one that put me up to asking that question about the vegetarians and what you eat in heaven. But anyway, I was learning to nourish my body, but my home life continued to be an unhealthy sort of atmosphere. My parents, who had me as teenagers, would argue, would fight, and this went on and on and on. And this sort of went on until around 1977, as I remember. My parents finally decided to divorce. I was about 15, but I was really relieved because family court is really no place for a kid. And I had had enough, yet despite this, I think my brother had a much harder time with it. I disliked my father in many ways, that side of him, for the way he treated my mother. And I was disappointed often in her for allowing it, quote unquote, and not breaking camp a lot sooner. But it took me about 30 years to come to grips with the idea that just maybe, and not justifying anyone's actions, but perhaps the frustration of having kids as a teenager and the feeling of having your dreams crushed before they've even had a chance to grow. I mean, what do you have to look forward to? It's one thing to have a dream die of its own weight. It's another thing altogether to never have had the chance to pursue your dreams in the first place. And that's why they wanted to send me here. But after my parents split up, I saw my dad. He continued to be a strong presence in our lives. And when he realized I was putting my future here at Salesianum in jeopardy, it was his goal to set me straight. By my junior year, and don't quote me on this, it's not necessary to look this up, but I think I had racked up 19 demerits. And I think that was just one shy of that magic number that would get me expelled. My parents were summoned to the school. Now, I don't know how it is in other communities, but in the black community, if your father had to take a half day off of work to come to school because you acting a fool, that's not a good thing. So I recall this particular day when my father was called into a conference by Father Rosinski, Dean of Students at the time, and he suggested, despite my athletic ability, that it'd be better for me to transfer to a public school, and that I was just not Salesianum material. I didn't want to follow the rules. While I was good at sports, this just wasn't the place for me. After all, you got 19 demerits, you only have one left, and if he keeps the pattern that he's been keeping thus far, probably ain't gonna make it past May. The way he put it though, I felt some sense of relief for a little while, because I thought, wow, he might be right. Maybe it is time for me to get out of here. So we walked out of the building, and then anybody who knows my father can pretty much figure out what that conversation was going to be about. And he may not have been a religious man, he certainly wasn't Catholic, but there was no way he was going to stand for me wasting his hard-earned money to obtain a private school education. So I'll give you the PG version of how this conversation went. I don't care what Father Rosinski is talking about. You're going to go to that school. And you're not going to waste my hard-earned money, nor am I going to stand by and let you blow it. I'll kill you first. And when he said that, I thought, like kids think these days, well, I could call social services on you because you just threatened me. But I probably would have never made it to the phone, so I didn't even try to do that. So he said, what is wrong with you? Do you think I like going to work every day taking crap from people? Do you? I'll give you the short answer. No. Of course I don't. Most of the times I hate it, but I go. And I bust my butt so that you can have the opportunities that I did not. Get it together. It really, really resonated with me at that particular time, and that was the first time probably that I saw clearly what he was trying to say to me. And then he ended it with this, and I'm taking you off the team, which was basically like stabbing me in the heart. In this particular case, it was right before the playoffs. We were supposed to play PS DuPont, and despite my coach calling, Coach Rossi, and a couple of parents, my father would not relent his resolve, and I missed that game, and that hurt probably more than anything. Probably would have still lost, but you got to play PS DuPont, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, I missed the game, we lost. But that was all the incentive that I need, and I finally got it. As I said, I vowed to get my stuff together both academically and athletically, and I came into my own senior year in both. Made honor roll several times. As I mentioned earlier, we were Catholic League champs, made all Catholic League. Never quite felt comfortable socially, but that's one thing that I regret, because I think when you're trying to straddle two worlds, it's often difficult, because one world will judge you for doing this, one world will judge you for doing that, instead of saying, let's explore each other. Let's try this. How about a little bit of that? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with going to that party? Or what's wrong with going over here to see what's happening down there? I think that's a necessary ingredient, but I didn't do it. So I had to keep my street credibility, so I dated a young lady from Howard. I went to all Howard events. I went to Howard prom. And I missed out on a lot of opportunity here at Salesianum, especially socially. And I really do regret that. But I did get my act in order. But now it was time to start seriously thinking about college. And after about 4 years of being at Salesianum, I said, you know what? I want to learn more about my own history and culture. And I want to attend a historically black college or university. But not only did I want to attend one, I wanted to get away from home. So I only applied to colleges that were at least an 8-hour car drive from Wilmington. Ain't nobody gonna just show up on me to visit. I don't like surprises. I did have a few overtures from D2, D3 schools, even got a call from Villanova once. I had a backcourt mate, his name was Tracy Peel. He was a Street and Smith All-American. and I like to think I made him look good. But several of my teammates, Patrick McGinty, who might have been my best friend on the team, rest in peace, and then Dollar Bill Kwiatkowski, who I talked about earlier, had walked on at a couple of D1 schools. But I had fallen out of love with basketball. I had concluded that I was not pro material, and I was not interested in playing the game simply for the love of the game. If I wasn't going to be a pro, I would turn my attention somewhere else. I turned my attention to academics, and it was at that point that I realized I had not done the work or taken advantage of all that Salesianum had offered me. I had not applied myself, and this became very evident as I started applying for college. I had pushed myself athletically, but not academically. And I vowed in that instant that I would never do that again. It was embarrassing. I promised myself to take advantage of each and every opportunity, and to always, no matter where I am, to do my best. But it was very late in the game. If you know, you folks who are applying for college, junior year is the year you have to really make a difference. And I had blew that. But thank God for Salesianum's stellar staff and reputation, because quite frankly, and maybe I'm biased, but a C at Sally's could translate into an A at a lot of schools. You can take that or leave it alone. We also had a highly regarded college placement office and top-tier counselors headed up by Mr. Stephen DiPietro. He was my savior. He took a personal interest in me and was somewhat fascinated by my intention of attending a historically black college and university. He painstakingly assisted me through the application process, walking me step by step, giving me the same level of attention as the students who were applying to Ivy League schools. There's no doubt in my mind, without Salesianum's reputation and his assistance, my outcomes would not have been the same. So as I was researching schools and trying to come up with what I wanted to do, and as I said, I used to spend a lot of time at my grandmother's house, rest in peace, and back then every black person I think got Jet and Ebony magazine. So I had picked up an Ebony magazine and I read about this place called Morehouse College. Martin Luther King, Maynard Jackson, Howard Thurman, just a host of these brilliant men. And that became my number one choice. Stellar history, great reputation, and a 12-hour drive from Wilmington, Delaware. Perfect. So I remember this day, it was like a Tuesday afternoon, it was March, and I always say it was sunny and unreasonably warm. And I don't know, I remember that because when I walked out, I was in this other world. But and I remember it like it was yesterday. Mr. DiPietro called me in his office and he said, I'm getting emotional. He said, I have a letter for you from Morehouse. And he handed me this envelope, and my hand shook like a leaf. And my heart sank to the bottom of my shoes, and I really feel like I almost fainted. Because I had built up so much energy into wanting to go to that school and have an opportunity to prove myself that I could really be a good student, and that I could really pay attention, and I could really follow the rules within reason. And it was a small envelope. So back then, I was always told, if you get a letter in a small envelope, you've been rejected, right? Because the real letter comes in a big envelope because you got the brochures, they got the maps in it, all the glossy stuff. So this was a small size envelope. So I was hurt. So he says, you got to open it. So I opened this letter, and the first line says, congratulations. You have been accepted to Morehouse College. and I kind of felt like I'm feeling right now, because I became the first person in my family to go to college. So it was a very, very moving and emotional day for me. And I know that without Salesianum, which, by the way, my first year at Morehouse, my first 2 years at Morehouse, I realized, and I cursed myself, because if I had paid attention to Sally's, did my work, put in a little bit of time, first 2 years in Morehouse would have been a breeze, because I had everything that I had the first 2 years in Morehouse at Sally's. So in closing, I just like to say this, on this Martin Luther King Day and this banquet, again, I'm in full support of what's happening. But I really do hope that, you know, with him in mind, I'm reminded of a quote, which is one of my favorite quotes by him, and I may be paraphrasing. But he says, "Let us learn to live together as brother and sisters, or die together as fools." We just got to do it. From the senseless killing that I already read about Wilmington, I read it and I go, this is ridiculous. Terrorists masquerading as Islam in Paris. These atrocities all around the world that are happening. We really need to learn how to live together, or we're going to perish altogether. So I want to do my part to inspire and encourage as many leaders as possible, which is what Salesianum produces. So I'm committed. So in any way that I can help, in any way, and I can't get Steve Harvey, okay? He don't leave the house for less than $500,000. I love you, Ray, but how much money do you got? But anything that I can do within my power, I'm willing to do. So I really do appreciate you coming out, and I pray that you get everything that you want in life. I pray that you have love, health, passion, and wealth. Not necessarily material wealth, although I've been poor and I've been rich. Rich is better. I can't wait to be rich again. But that's just to tithe. I have more money to tithe and do more good things. Not to buy stuff. I truly hope that you get everything you may want in life. As St. Francis de Sales says, and when you do it well. And may I get everything that you want, because you may know about something that's good that I don't know anything about, and why should I be left out? Thank you very much for coming. God bless you, and good night. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, cool. Definitely okay. All right, cool. Thank you, sir.